So welcome to Tasting New York, live with the pros. It's a virtual round table discussion by three wine professionals, and what's really cool is that we all have Ontario roots, and this is going to an Ontario audience. The reason we're doing this is for the first time in over 30 years, a batch of New York wines is being released by the LCBO. That's happening as an LCBO online exclusive on January the 26th, with two more to follow at vintages in the middle of May. So we're here to taste and discuss those wines and bring you up to date on New York. I know we're right next door, but a lot of Ontario folks do not know a lot about New York wine. So this event is brought to you by the New York Grape and Wine Foundation, the organization that for years has been marketing, helping market the wine industry, bringing tourism to the state and reaching out to other markets. The new direction for New York wine marketing is historic, diverse, bold, cool climate. And that cool climate part will ring true again with Ontario consumers. We're going to be talking a lot about those aspects in the next half hour. My name is David Lawrason. I'm the VP of Wine for Wineline. I'll give you a bit more of my personal perspective in a moment, but I want to introduce our other pros. We're joined by Sara D'Amato, a very good friend and colleague at Wineline, a mother of three young sons and the hardest working woman I know. Sara, what do you have to say for yourself?
Well, thank you, David. This is pretty exciting for me. This is the biggest release, as you said, in a long time of New York wines. And I think that consumers here are up for a great education on what's available right next door. They're our neighbors.
Okay, and also joined by Paul Grieco, born and raised in Toronto, and is now leading sommelier, the general and the manager at Terroir Wine Bar, an all-around wine personality in New York City. Paul, welcome. So glad to have you here.
Super stoked to be here. I think growing up in Ontario, and I'll get into that in a few moments, allowed me to have an open-minded relationship with wine in general. And moving to New York in '91, I was able to follow the growth of New York State wine. So it's great to see my old homeland welcome with open arms these products of my new home. Super stoked to be here. I think Riesling is it. There is a poignancy, a linear quality, a filigreed quality to these Rieslings that I gravitate towards. It is long and lean and mean and pure and crunchy acidity on the palate of the 11 Great Lakes, and goddamn, I hope there's 11, or the 11, not Great Lakes, Finger Lakes.
Finger Lakes.
Seneca Lake, as Sara said, is the deepest on both the east side and the west side. Some different climatic conditions to allow different things to happen. I think we see the variability of the Riesling grape in the Finger Lakes shine on Seneca through this Wagner Riesling. Kicks ass.
I really like this. This is the first wine I've tasted, or I tasted these wines yesterday as well. I was really pleased by the structure and the balance and sort of the linearity of this wine, without it being a steer. I mean, it's got grip, it's got tension, but it's not a steer. They've got lovely fruit that the end of the warmth at the end of the growing season really sort of helped build that in. And I think it's a classic, lovely Riesling.
Well, listen, I'm biased towards Riesling, as you acknowledged a few moments ago. But ultimately, regardless of the grape and the producer and all the other stuff, what I try to gravitate towards at our wine bar in New York is yumminess. And then I should define yumminess. Yumminess means that one sip leads to a second sip, one glass leads to a second glass, one bottle leads to a second bottle. And hopefully, while you were listening to Sara's awesome commentary about the region in general, and David's very, very high professionalism, you saw me taking a lot of goddamn sips, people.
Yep.
I love it. Is
good stuff.
Yummy. So.
It's tense, it's nervy, it's what Riesling should be. And I think achieving that sweet spot in Riesling is so important. And
did you just use the S word?
Yes.
You can't use the S word.
Sweet.
No.
Come on, this is the only variety that I use the S word in, and because it's great. It's great, and we think of dry Riesling, right? And as being completely dry, 0% sugar, but most of the time there's a little bit of residual sugar. And 4 grams per liter, even if you put 4 grams per liter in Riesling, you can't tell that there's any sugar in it at all due to the naturally high acid. So there is a range, even within dry, there's a range of residual sugars. And if you get that right mark for the amount of acid that's there, it is a little bit rounder and less like abrasive, and it's more appealing.
Yes,
Okay,
I think that's.
excellent.
I was just going to add in, I'm sorry,
Sure.
David, that historically, even back when I arrived in 91, Riesling was the conversation for the Finger Lakes. And I think a lot of the wines back then were too lean, too mean, it was a scorched earth policy on the palate. And what we see now, climate change having a benefit here, a longer growing season, greater ripeness, better folks there making better wine and taking greater risks, especially with these Rieslings. And I think the conversation of New York State Riesling is not a localized conversation or a national conversation. It is a worldwide Riesling conversation that when we do talk about Germany, Austria, Alsace, Australia, Ontario, we're also including New York State in that. And that's great.
Absolutely.
I just want to mention one quote that Christopher said was that I love paradox in my wine. And I think just in the grape varieties alone, you can find paradox and then you can riff from there.
Oh, riff on.
Alrighty. Well, I'm still guilty of when I think about wine to isolate one trait and go there where I should be after 30 odd years of doing this stuff, a little bit broader minded. But I'm going to hone in on the alcohol level on this red wine. It's 12%. And the way that reflects in the glass is that it is quaffable, or as a certain segment of all the cool kids say today, it is crushable. Now, it is crushable with a light chill. I agree with Sara on that note. But even at room temp, this is crushable red wine. Some days when you get home from work or you're at home right now, you're homeschooling 2 kids, you're dealing with your spouse in the other room, you're doing 200 Zoom sessions a day. And you know what? Maybe you want a glass of red wine. The beautiful thing about a glass of this Channing Daughters red is that you can have a glass, you could have 2 glasses, and still read those kids a bedtime story and get involved in cooking dinner, plus. This thing is not going to crush you. Now, stepping back from that specificity to Long Island, because I think this is our only Long Island wine
that's correct, yeah.
in this group. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be a great grower, winemaker, do not buy land on Long Island. Set your sights in Niagara, because the pressures that these wine growers are under in Long Island is insane. The summer storms that whip through town in August, September are insane. I can't speak so much to the soil. It's rather shallow, it's gravelly. They liken it to Bordeaux. Okay. But the weather is ludicrous. And what Chris Tracy and all of his mates out there have to do to tend these vines, to get ripe grapes, to get healthy grapes, is ludicrous. And then Chris takes it one more step by coming up with this witch's blue of a blend, which I think is the only combo of these 4 varieties on the goddamn planet Earth.
For sure.
And I will end with the most important note. It is crushable wine, people. Drink the goddamn thing.
In terms of vineyard, they work really sustainably. They don't use herbicides, pesticides. They're really concerned about erosion, the way that a lot of these sloping vineyards are concerned about in New York. So, love to hear what you think.
All right, Paul?
I would never walk away from an open bottle of a Cab Franc dominated Saint-Emilion. But when it comes to Cab Franc, I beat a path to Loire Valley. And appellations like Chinon, Bourgogne, Saumur, St. Nicholas de Bourgogne, etc. I love those wines all the year long. And if I'm going to drink a Cabernet in the summer, with all due respect to Cabernet Sauvignon, it's probably going to be a Cabernet Franc, because there seems to be a lightness, a brightness, dare I say it, a Riesling-esque quality about this grape if planted in the right conditions. And for me, Loire Valley Cab Francs are more terroir driven than they are fruit driven. But we're in upstate New York, and I got to tell you, I was slow on the pickup for Cabernet Franc in the Finger Lakes. I thought it was going to be other varietals, some Germanic, Pinot Noir, that were going to be the signature red of this region. And over the last decade, what we have seen in multiple expressions is that Cabernet Franc is, dare I say it, the shit in the Finger Lakes region. There is a perfect Loire-esque sense of place. It leads with more earth-driven aromatics and that structure, but it is combined with a beautiful red fruit spiciness. It is eminently quaffable, though a little bit more structured than that Channing Daughters crushable wine we had a few moments ago. I think it's damn brilliant stuff.
Yeah, you know, it's very interesting. Cabernet Franc has really seen not even a renaissance, because it really was never that well known in Ontario, New York, in the Northeast. But I think it's becoming the Northeast grape. I think it's easier to work with, perhaps more winter hardy, a little bit healthier to grow, particularly in humid climates. And finally, I think the winemaking is getting it. And that means they're not trying to make it Cabernet Sauvignon. They're not trying to make it big. They're not letting it hang too long. They're not over oaking it. They're not over extracting it. And it's coming across as something fresh, energetic, interesting, and has a lot of sort of good florality again, this red fruit character. And this is a classic example. By the way, this is a 2018, sort of again, a cooler vintage. Did they talk about that, Sarah, at all?
Yeah, a little bit about it, but mainly because it was fresh. It seems to have been a little bit less unpredictable than the 2017, but still a fresher vintage. But overall the trend is that these temperatures are getting higher and higher. They're noticing changes in global warming that way as well too, and more extreme variations. But yeah, the freshness is totally apparent in this wine. I love it. But something I appreciate the comments about the Loire Valley. One thing I sometimes have difficulty with, especially in Chinon, is just this underripe character. Just almost too much green sometimes. Violet's beautiful, but sometimes too much green. And in this wine, it's still ripe. It's not underripe. It's light, but really pleasantly ripe.
Yeah, delicious, and you can drink it anytime. And again, even the light chill would work really well on this.
If I was a somm in Toronto, or I guess anywhere in Ontario, and I was thinking of putting a Duality on my glass program, and of course I don't know the prices of these wines for the LCBO, but and I've got this new region that a lot of my guests are not that familiar with, New York State, close but far away. I would buy both the Boundary Breaks Cab Franc and the Fjord Cab Franc, because they're approaching this Cab Franc game from vitally different directions. Both, rightly or wrongly, I'm going to use Loire Valley reference points. The Fjord is coming in as a big, full throttle, Bourgogne-esque Cab Franc to me, more structured, more four square. Where the Boundary Breaks was a rounder wine, this has cornered or squared off corners. And I love the structure and, dare I say, the bigness of this wine. But it's not big like huge alcohol. It's 12.9. The fruit is still restrained. It's compact. It feels like it's about to burst out of the skin. This is a bigger, weightier expression of Cab Franc with balance. And the Boundary Breaks was a lighter, more filigreed expression of that grape with a different type of balance. I want these wines together. I think they're great.
Yeah, this is a much more textural wine. It feels like it's going to be big, but you're right. The alcohol is moderate in it. It's not at all hot. The oak's nicely handled. It's got this smooth textural palate that people love in big reds, right? So I'm not going to call this a big red. I'm going to call it a medium red with aspirations. And I really encourage everyone to not only purchase these wines, but take a trip when borders open up again. I really hope that you'll go down and have a look. That's it for the tastings. Any final thoughts, Sara, on what we've experienced?
Yeah, I mean, I love the restraint and energy and verve in these wines. I love the comment that Paul made about these wines that feel like they're bursting out of their shell in terms of juiciness, drinkability, versatility. It's exciting, and I'm happy that as their neighbor that we finally have a chance to explore. And I think for this new generation of drinkers, this has really been their first opportunity in Ontario to really do so. So we have wines here, benchmark wines, flagship wines from producers who really believe in these varieties, and I think it shows in this collection.
Well, thank you very much, Sara. You've done a great work in the last 24 hours, and actually before that, and sort of pulling all this together. Appreciate you taking most of your day yesterday with your 3 young sons running around, your husband also working from home. It's been a lot of work, and you've done a great job sort of commenting on these wines. So thank you very much. Paul, any wrap-up thoughts from you, sir?
Well, don't take this badly, but I am jealous of all of you up in Ontario that you have these wines. I think the fact that the LCBO is going to list these 8 wines from New York State, if I was a wine buyer up there, I would be jumping for joy. I think every restaurateur should jump in. And again, I don't know the prices, but there are at least 5 wines that I would want to put on my list. I want to put all of them, but I think if you were to take 5, if you could put a Long Island wine, a Hudson River Valley wine, and 2 to 3 wines from the Finger Lakes from different lakes, you would give voice to the largesse of New York State that, dare I say, for me at my humble little joint in New York City and my peers, that we're not even bloody well doing. So, whoever selected these wines, thumbs up, great goddamn job. And I think these wines show new world terroir with an old school mentality about how they're crafting them. And to that, it means balance. And what we all need in life, as well as in our grape juice, is balance.
Well, bang on. Thank you so much, Paul. Great insights, great perspective. So happy that you're able to join us and sort of bring the wines to life in a way that almost no one else in the world does. So thank you, sir. Really appreciate it. And to all our viewers, just a reminder that these wines are now available, LCBO exclusives online. You can order them online. They will be shipped to your local store. You just have to drive by and maybe line up, depending on the time of day that you go. But you can pick them up handily near your own home within 2 or 3 days and enjoy them and share them with your friends. It's a great adventure and really happy to see these wines back. So thanks again, all of you, and drink up. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yes.